Broadcasting a new paradigm on the One Network.
Before we get very far into our next story, we do have a warning for you tonight. What you're about to see and hear may not be suitable for children. Tonight, take a walk in their world.
Transpicuous news, connecting the dots between the lines.
Before we get very far into our next story, we do have a warning for you tonight. What you're about to see and hear may not be suitable for children. Tonight, take a walk in their world.
Transpicuous news, connecting the dots between the lines.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's not evening, it's afternoon today. Welcome to Transpicuous News for February 22nd, 2015. The news show that just gets longer and longer and longer. Unfortunately, Wednesday night's midweek report kind of got cut off before I got through the entire report because we ran out of time, but scheduling has been fixed, so that won't happen again. Unless, of course, I go beyond an hour and a half, in which case we're all probably going to be really, really in trouble. Strange week this week. After a week full of lots and lots of stuff, all of a sudden, the last 36 hours, everything is gone silent. Yeah, it's as if the news has just stopped entirely. Makes me go, it's quiet, too quiet. But I have lots and lots of stuff for you guys, and some enjoyable stuff, I think. So let's just get right into the news for this week. First up, you got to giggle, because, a couple weeks ago we talked about ODD. Now officials have declared eating healthy a mental disorder. Yes, you too, if you care about the food you put in your body, and if you actually, do things like look at labels and study the ingredients and really make a big effort to only put healthy food in your body, you have a mental disorder. Isn't that fun? And of course, right on the heels of that, these people obviously have a mental disorder as well. Of course, I'm not quite sure it has to do with the healthy eating. After Google Glass and Apple Watch, Japan offers wearable tomatoes. Yes, a tomatan is a backpack that can be loaded with 6 mid-sized tomatoes. It looks like a small humanoid robot with a tomato for its head, and it sits on the athlete's shoulders. And then you pull a little lever in the robot's foot, and it feeds you a tomato. So if you're a marathon runner and you need that extra energy, say you might get from a tomato, you can wear an 8-kilogram backpack that looks like a robotic tomato that will feed you tomatoes during the race. No, I'm not making this up. This was actually news, and this is actually an invention out of Japan. Oh, I can't wait to see just how many marathon runners in the next Olympics are going to be wearing this one. And of course, to go along with that one, the U.S. government has proposed a sugary food tax to curb obesity. That's right. They're thinking of taxing sugary foods. So, let's put a push on instead, companies going to artificial sweeteners, because those are so much healthier for you. Artificial, like, aspartame, shit like that. And not to mention the fact, if you want to talk about, obesity and health, McDonald's is giving away free vaccines with their Happy Meals in Texas. Don't you all just want to run out to Texas go get a Happy Meal for your kids and get them jabbed with a shot of toxins? That's right. So the U.S. is good. Wait, let's see. Let's sort this out. If you think about healthy food and you endeavor to eat a healthy diet for your body and mind, you have a mental disorder. But in order to combat obesity, the U.S. government wants to tax sugary snacks, thereby pushing, all of these companies that make the sugary snacks to go to sugar-free snacks, full of aspartame. But you can go to McDonald's and get a pile of crap Happy Meal with a vaccine. And apparently that is okay with the government. Telling you, there are days when it just doesn't pay to read the news, because holy crap. Speaking of health, there's been a deadly superbug outbreak in UCLA. Some 200 people have been exposed. It's just terrifying. Another superbug outbreak out of a hospital laboratory in a university that's known for playing with biotoxins. But of course, it didn't escape from their lab. No. It was just something that they found in the hospital because they didn't sterilize the equipment well enough. So, But be afraid, because it's a superbug and it kills like all these people. And 200 people have been exposed. They don't actually say how many have this or have even been tested for it, but 200 people were exposed. Be so afraid. And then you get, sorry, this story just made me giggle my ass off. Apparently this guy in Russia got really pissed off when he was going through the airport scanners and they asked him to remove his belt. So instead, he just took all of his clothes off, every last stitch. And the best part of it is apparently it didn't faze the security people whatsoever. They were like, yeah, okay, you're good, go through. Can you imagine someone doing this at like LAX? Oh, that would be so funny. Now we're going to talk about serious news here because, the news needs to also be very serious. NATO member Turkey to buy $3.4 billion worth of incompatible Chinese anti-missiles. It's totally incompatible for them to buy these Chinese missiles because it wouldn't be compatible with the NATO weapons. Of course, I'd like to point out that I think they're very fashionable. I think these missiles way more fashionable because everyone knows that like khaki is so last year. So I don't have a problem with this. I think Turkey should definitely go with the upbeat blue. Maybe it'll make the people a little happier when they're firing them off. It's just a thought. Australia is getting hammered right now with two, not one, but two cyclones. Unbelievable, because at some point it was like 250 km/h winds. I mean, last week we had 75 km/h winds here. And you could walk at a 45-degree angle because the wind was holding you upright. So I can't even think about what 250 km/h winds would be like. Of course, the Aussies, being the Aussies, they take it in stride. You have a cyclone, you go surfing. It's what you do. It's kind of like the Canadians. You have a snowstorm, you might as well have a barbecue. Right? It's what you do. East coast of the States is getting hit hard by another storm, and I'm, pardon my Canadian, but it's this seemingly unending parade of snowstorms moving over the East Coast. National Weather Service says the storm is expected to bring 6 inches more of the snow in some areas of the Northeast. Meanwhile, in Canada, that's kind of like spring. But I digress. This was such a giggle. Literally, it was one of those things. Cambodia's news blackmailers. Apparently, in Cambodia, the journalists find out the news, and then they blackmail whoever the news is against to get them to not tell the news story. And, whatever works. If these guys don't have, great big news conglomerates there to pay them to lie, so they got to do what they can to make a living. Seriously, I mean, not really that much different than CNN and BBC, really. Oh, this was so good. I mean, everyone loves to make fun of Joe Biden. I mean, you can't help yourself. Big video moment where he's introducing the new Secretary of Defense. And he calls the Secretary of Defense his wife on stage and then kind of fondles her, kind of whispers sweet nothings in her ears. And I mean, literally, everyone was just like, really, Joe? I'm not sure that's appropriate. Of course, I liked this next picture because I thought, well, this, now I understand, is what Joe Biden really said. Hail Hydra. And I want to put a big call out to 9gag, because they keep me entertained in the evenings when, I just need some downtime, when my brain just needs to kind of take a breath and go on to 9gag, and I find this stuff, and it's awesome. So big call out to 9gag. You guys rock. This was so funny. With all the news that we've covered over the last, week and a half now, about the hacking and the spying and all this stuff the NSA has been doing. Well, apparently Google has just warned that the FBI wants to hack any computer in the world. They warned against increasing government powers for infiltrating computer systems around the world, saying it would open a number of monumental constitutional issues. Because, the U.S. doesn't have already a monumental number of constitutional issues to deal with. But yeah, the FBI now wants to be able to hack any computer in the world, which is kind of interesting. Apparently, they don't really have that much pride. They're all about sloppy seconds because, the NSA has already been and gone. FBI is just trying to trail along behind, have a little bit of fun. And you sit here and you have to shake your head. You sit there and go, in France, they have a massive rally. It's the anti-brutality rally against police brutality. So the police come out and bomb them with tear gas and water cannons. Way to go, guys. I think that's what we call proving our point. But, do whatever, floats your boat. Seriously? So the German Catholic Church is actually richer than the Vatican. Turns out. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese in Cologne, Germany, has disclosed it's worth $3.35 billion. 3.35 billion euros. $3.82 billion, making it richer than the Vatican. And they go through all this stuff about how, this new Pope and his financial transparency. He talks about, of course, we covered the story about them keep finding all these hidden accounts in the Vatican. And I think they're up to, they found $2 billion now in hidden Vatican bank accounts, which really is quite humorous in and of itself. But this is the best part, right? So they talk about the German Catholic Church has got 3.35 billion euros. That's what its worth is. And yet, its landmark Gothic cathedral along the Rhine is listed as being worth only 27 euros. €1 for each of the 26 parcels of land beneath it, and €1 for the priceless building. Okay, so in other words, the Catholic Church is worth, this much in dollar figures, but you got to wonder, all these, priceless buildings that are worth, here, I'll buy it for $1. Because that makes us feel better about the transparency of their bookkeeping. Always. This was just strange. Strange. Out of Canada, New Brunswick students, New Brunswick is a province on the very east coast of Canada. They object to online courses recording facial features, knuckles, and voice Students at Rutgers University are balking at a new biometric software used in online classes that requires them to record their facial features, knuckles, and photo ID. Okay, I kind of get the facial features. I mean, basically, here's a picture, photo ID, facial features, recording. Knuckles? What? Is it because the students are always walking around like threatening the security systems? Is that why it's knuckles? It's seriously, I kind of lost here. Fingerprints, thumbprint, retina, knuckles. Okay, well, to each his own. Anyways, the students, they're not happy about it, and they're seriously like making a stand for saying, yeah, I don't think so. In looking for news yesterday, because there wasn't any, I found this, and it was kind of interesting, and I'm kind of reading it going, fire rips through the Torch skyscraper in Dubai. This was at one point one of the tallest buildings in the world, and I think it's now rated like it's the 32nd tallest building in the world. Massive fire rips through the building. Does anyone else find it ironic that the building's called the Torch? I don't know. Of course, I found this very interesting, these pictures of pieces of burning concrete and molten glass. And I find it interesting because concrete doesn't burn. Methinks that perhaps there could be more to this fire than meets the eye. Maybe we'll have to see if someone can find out who's living in the building. Because it was it's like, I don't know, a 2-bedroom was $500,000 for a 2-bedroom condo. So, I don't know, maybe we should take a look and see, well, who was living in that building? Seriously, the Ukraine comes to Canada and basically says, the Ukrainian deputy foreign minister says to the Canadians, we're preparing for full-scale war, and we want you to supply us weapons. And the Canadian government's like, I think you got us confused with Americans, because like we really don't have any. But we'd be happy to maybe we could go buy some for you and send those over to you, which puts me in mind of like the 16-year-olds hanging outside the beer store saying, hey, can you buy me some beer? Can you buy me some beer to anyone who walks into the beer store? So I don't know, Canada's gonna go buy guns for the Ukraine? First of all, what? I'm telling you. Oh, and I also love the fact that the deputy foreign minister says the West needs to stiffen up in the spine. That's right, stiffen up. You Canadian pussies that need to give us weapons. Yeah, okay. This one, strangely enough, is not being covered by Western media. I can't imagine why. This was on one of the biggest German talk show hosts. Political talk show in Germany. The Kiev ambassador to Germany says the neo-Nazis are part of our forces, and without them, Russia would have defeated us. Psst. Russia. Or, sorry, let me rephrase that. The rebels did defeat you. So it's not really saying much for your neo-Nazis. But seriously, he says the neo-Nazis are part of the Ukrainian armed forces, that they are controlled and coordinated by Kiev's pro-Western regime, and that without them, the Russian army would have advanced much farther. Of course, they always say the Russian army, in air quotes, meaning, of course, didn't happen. The Russian army would have advanced much farther. Yeah. And Canada's supposed to buy these guys weapons, which, in America and Canada, going to buy weapons for the neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. And as I keep saying, well, is it any wonder that when Russia tried to push that new declaration through the United Nations back in November, that was an anti-racism, anti-neo-Nazi legislation for the United Nations, the 3 countries who voted against it, Canada, the US, and the Ukraine. And I'm going to keep pushing that one. I'm sorry, I really am. I'm going to mention it as often as I can because I'm still so disgusted by it that it just needs to be mentioned every single week. So maybe I'll make an effort. I'm going to mention it every single week. Canada government supports neo-Nazis. Way to go, Canada. I'm so proud of you. Idiots. Now, this is very interesting, though. And there's been a couple of little touching articles on this, and a couple of even Western economists have kind of niggled at it around the corners, touched a little bit. Basically, the IMF, EU at work are sinking the Ukraine into massive unrepayable debts. So they give them all these billions of dollars of bailout loans when they know, in fact, that the Ukraine's never going to be able to pay them back, which is just a form of ownership, isn't it? Because you know that the Ukraine had to put up assets to back these loans. So what is it that the IMF and the EU got stated for assets? I'd like that to be disclosed, please and thank you. Bear with me a moment. My light is about to blow up, so I'm just going to turn it off. It's going to be a little darker, folks. Sorry, but it is what it is. I have a possessed light bulb that just doesn't want to hold itself together. And Victoria Nuland is back in the news again. You know, the famous "fuck you, EU." Government, U.S. government worker, seriously? Apparently, and this was out of a German, this is a translation of a German article in one of the German newspapers. Americans had an internal briefing with the U.S. delegation in the Munich Security Conference last Friday. And apparently, as Victoria Nuland sat there in the conference, she made some interesting remarks, like, we can fight the Europeans, fight them rhetorically. I'm not even sure what she means by fight them rhetorically is. Maybe that's just a translation issue. According to the report, Nuland called Chancellor Merkel's trip to visit Russian President Vladimir Putin Merkel's Moscow stuff. One of the senators was to have ridiculed the German defense minister, calling him the defeatist minister, and referenced the Europeans' Moscow bullshit. What I love the article because it goes on after they talk about the fact, they mention the fact that she, last summer got caught saying "fuck the EU" in a screaming match. And of course, I love the fact that the whole conversation got leaked out to the media. And then all of this stuff. Then there's a little comment at the bottom that talks about top diplomat Nuland is considered a conservative. In case of an electoral victory by the Republicans in the coming year, she will be considered a potential new Secretary of State. Oh, come on, Americans. You must be so proud to think that someone like her could, at some point in time, maybe be your Secretary of State. I love this comment. She's married to Robert Kagan, a neoconservative thinker. Last year, he published a text of why America must remain the undisputed leader of the world. Yeah, I'd like to dispute that, and I'm pretty sure I can point to at least 4 or 5 billion other people who'd like to dispute that. So, dude, seriously, don't insult us. Yeah, so anyways, that's Victoria Nuland and what she's been up to. So you better hope that, she doesn't end up as Secretary of State, because God knows what she's going to do or say next. The big news, of course, this week is that Russia ratified the $100 billion BRICS New Development Bank. I still haven't seen them actually put any money in. They keep talking about this money. It's been like 2 years of them talking about money for BRICS banks, but I haven't actually seen them fund it yet. So they say they're going to. They've got all the logistics worked out, but I'd like to. Bank balance. Can we see where this money came from? Okay. And Russia launches SWIFT alternative, linking 91 entities within Russia. I love this article. Back in 2013, the NSA was first exposed for secretly monitoring the SWIFT payment flows. The NSA? Seriously? The This appears to have been among the last straws for Russia and others as far as both NSA spying and the dollar domination. Last year, following threats to remove Russia from SWIFT by the UK, now this is very interesting. Threats to remove Russia from SWIFT by the UK. Why the UK? Well, as I broke it in the summer of 2013, who owns SWIFT? Everyone assumes that there's some kind of an international entity that, deals with all these bank transfers, except that SWIFT is 100% owned and controlled by HSBC, which is run out of the City of London. Well, it's actually Hong Kong, but pretend run out of the City of London. So basically, yeah, so Russia is put together their own SWIFT alternative linking 91 credit institutions. Suggests de-dollarization is considerably further along than many expected at this point. No, I'm sorry. I'm kind of shocked at how slow they're moving. I really expected this to have been over by now. But hey, tortoise and the hare. We'll see who gets to the finish line. This was another big story. Now, if you've noticed, China has been really, really quiet in the news. You get little bits here and there, but all of a sudden, this new year, China, very, very quiet on a lot of different things. This was a big news story, though. Zero Hedge, Russia dumps most U.S. paper ever as China reduces Treasury holdings to January 2013 levels. The interesting part is, down here at the bottom, it says, it wasn't just Russia, the country that is ever more frequently said to be in the same camp as Russia and against the U.S., namely China, also sold another $6 billion in Treasury notes in the last month, which would have made the U.S. Treasury holdings equal with those of Japan, except that Tokyo also sold $10 billion worth of Treasury notes that month. Look at that. Everyone's dumping their U.S. Treasury notes. So if someone's selling them, someone else must be buying them. And who's buying them? The U.S.? And if so, are they paying with monopoly money? Because I'm pretty sure China's not going to accept any more IOU fiat dollars. Interesting times, my friends. We'll have to watch how that plays out. Okay, and going into financial stuff, again, as I keep saying this, we talked about MasterCard is now Russia's internal payment system is run by MasterCard. Well, now Visa's joined up as well. Hello? Russian sanctions? Hello? Anyone? So what? Normal companies aren't allowed to deal with Russia, but the financial companies are. Yeah, American financial companies, no problem. They can go in and do all this stuff for Russia. Isn't it amazing how the banksters seem to make their own rules whatever they want? It's amazing, isn't it? And this was big news. This piece is really, really important. Wall Street Journal put out an article that Deutsche Bank and Banco Santander in Spain are going to fail the Federal Reserve stress test. Said it. They said it outright. It's going to happen. They're going to fail, which is interesting when you consider they both passed the ECB stress test a couple of months ago. As the article goes on, he says, then again, technically, it's not just a second problem. It's some 62.2 trillion problems, which is what the gross notional exposure of all derivatives on Deutsche Bank's balance sheet is pre-netting. 62.2 trillion overexposure. Yeah. Right. So the strongest economy in the European Union their lead bank is overexposed by $62 trillion in derivatives. But the euro's just fine. And the whole European Union, this whole Greece thing, it'll just blow away. And everything is going to be sunshine and daisies. It's not a problem. Not at all. Speaking of Greece, it was another soap opera week. I started the same thing like last report. You start screenshotting, and then you throw your hands up in the air and say, I don't even know why I'm screenshotting all these stories, because 6 hours from now, the story is going to change anyway, so it really doesn't make any sense. First you had the EU give an ultimatum, and then Greece gives Europe a counter-ultimatum, and then let's see. This was hysterical. Apparently, the Greek finance minister Varoufakis almost got into a fist fight with the Eurogroup's chairman. At which point, the German finance minister Schäuble decided, "I'm not friends with you anymore. I'm not talking to you," through a little schoolyard snit, going, "I'm not playing with you anymore," and wouldn't talk to the Greek finance minister. And that goes really, really well when you're trying to negotiate back and forth. If you have none of the people actually talking to each other, it goes really well when you're trying to negotiate like adults. Come on, boys. Pull up your panties. Use your big boy words. And maybe, put the fists away, and the slingshots, and the pea shooters. And try just, I don't know, working it out. Seriously. Of course, then it was announced yesterday, the Eurozone officials and Greece have agreed to extend the bailout by 4 months, which is fucking bullshit. This is the biggest cop-out. This is called we have no fucking clue what the hell we're going to do. So what we're going to do is just extend the deadline for another 4 months. It's kind of like U.S. Congress saying, we can't seem to balance a budget, so we're just going to push the deadline forward a couple of months, and maybe something miraculous will happen before that deadline comes around again, and we won't have to actually deal with this. Needless to say, the public in Greece apparently aren't all that pleased. Some Greeks wondered what the government had achieved. We went through 2 months of agony, emptied the banks, to realize that we're still a debt colony. The paymasters call the shots. That's not sounding so good. Now, there was an interesting article that got released this week. Very kind of interesting. And the Grexit into gold-backed drachma conspiracy theory, or Plan Z. Apparently, Plan Z was created at 2012. Plan Z was to enable Greece to withdraw from the Eurozone in the event of a Greek banking collapse. Yet, here we sit. It was drawn up in absolute secrecy by small teams totaling approximately 24 officials at the European Commission, the European Central Bank, and the IMF. So Brussels, Frankfurt, and Washington. Notice no one from Greece was invited for the meeting. Those officials were headed by the ECB, Euro Working Group, and the IMF and European Commission to prevent premature disclosure. No single document was created, no emails were exchanged, and no Greek officials were informed. The plan was based on the 2003 introduction of new dinars into Iraq by the Americans. Wow, isn't that interesting? The plan required rebuilding the Greek economy and banking system, including isolating Greek banks by disconnecting them from the target system, closing ATMs, and imposing capital and currency controls. Really? Did you know that Greece, the Central Bank of Greece, is actually one of the few central banks that prints euros for the European Central Bank, and they have a lovely high-tech printing setup all in place. Kind of interesting, isn't it? The plan based on the 2003 introduction of new dinars into Iraq by the Americans is also very, very interesting. And this goes into the whole dinar stuff and the global currency revaluation, etc. Now, and I'm going to get into this just for a second. Sorry, guys. The show's going to be a little bit longer than I anticipated because I decided to pull up my soapbox again. So when the Shrub went into Iraq, they planned on doing in Iraq the exact same thing that was done in Kuwait in the first Gulf War, which was you go in, you take over their central bank, you knock their currency down to zero, and then one day, magically, you revalue the currency back up to where it's supposed to be. You don't let anyone know, and only, the high stakes players knew what was coming, so they were able to get in there and buy all the currency, the Kuwaiti currency. Oh, it revalued. Oh, look, we all made billions and billions of dollars. Oh, aren't we all so happy? So that was the Shrub's plan when he went into Iraq in 2003, but he fucked it up. Big surprise. And basically the information got out to the public, and you now have hundreds of thousands of people all over the world who invested in Iraqi dinar. Back in 2012, though, when this plan was put together, part of the plan for the whole revaluating currencies and new financial system was based on the fact that basically all the countries around the world were told, buy dinar. Buy dinar. Get dinar, put it, stash it, keep it away, and once it revalues, that is going to be like your little fundraising, your little, here you go, let's start everything all over again, right? Here's your startup money. I have two very, very high up government contacts that are non-American, two small countries, and I verified through both of them that that's exactly what they were told to do. That the governments of those two countries were told, go sink everything you've got into Iraqi dinar. So one has to wonder if they're talking about this plan was based on the 2003 introduction of the new dinars into Iraq by the Americans. My assumption, and this is only my own opinion, my assumption is this is what they're talking about. So when it talks about imposing capital and currency controls, did perhaps in the 2011-2012 bailouts with the IMF, with the central bank, and everyone for Greece, when we talk about you have to put an asset up, something has to be put on the table to guarantee those loans that they're giving them. Did Greece put up perhaps the dinar that they bought as collateral to these loans? I don't know. Like I said, it's just my own question. I have no intel on that at all. But the fact of how this was worded, very, very interesting. And if you actually go to the information about Plan Z, and you can look it up online, there's a few little interesting little tidbits like that in there. It's interesting reading. Let's move on. Speaking of Iraq, Iraq opened the brand new commercial bank this week. It was a rather big, lavish affair. A new commercial bank, which one would assume deals with international commerce. Otherwise, why would you need a commercial bank? And if it deals with international commerce, that would assume that you're going to be doing international trade, which would assume that that means that you're part of the World Trade Organization, which would then assume that maybe, finally, officially, Iraq has gotten over there are hurdles. You know, like the international sanctions. Of course, there's one thing that you need to be in the World Trade Organization, and that is an internationally recognized currency. Can't be in the World Trade Organization without an internationally recognized currency. Guess we better keep our eyes peeled, huh, folks? This was also kind of interesting. We talked about back a few weeks ago when the EU announced they were throwing sanctions against Russia and coming out, and it was right after the Greek, it was like the day after the Greek elections when Syriza took power in Greece, and Syriza stood up and said, excuse us, you're not speaking for the Greek people. We didn't say anything about Russia being guilty and about you putting sanctions on Russia. And who stood up with them? Hungary and Slovakia. Well, Hungary is kind of becoming a bit of a thorn in the side. Considering the location of the latest rift growing in Europe, it's becoming apparent that the deep-seated resentment is turning to outright opposition. In the cracks in the DC NATO armor are becoming more severe. More and more countries are now openly doing things which they'd only previously whispered of in secret. Take the case of the newest country on an ever-growing list of countries to valiantly reject the US, UK, IMF-funded, techno-flavored unipolar governance, Hungary. And yesterday, I didn't get a chance to screenshot it. There was an article of basically Hungary came out and said, yeah, you know what? I really think Europe needs to start working with Russia more. And like, let's get some trade deals going. Interesting. And in global news, let's expand our horizons. Let's get out of Europe for a while. Seriously, that is such a soap opera. Venezuela, also kind of a soap opera. Last week, Venezuelan police raided Caracas Mayor Ledesma's house and like basically dragged him out. And the president of Venezuela said the opposition leader must answer for all the crimes committed against the country's peace and security. And with regards to arresting the mayor of Caracas as part of that coup attempt 2 weeks ago. And of course, immediately, the U.S. totally denies plotting to overthrow the Venezuelan government because they would never do such a thing. How could you possibly point a finger at the U.S. for trying to overthrow a foreign government? That's not the kind of stuff that they do. How dare they point a finger at them? Sorry. I'm a little sarcastic today. I hope you can deal with it all. I just can't help myself today. It's been one of those weeks. No, this is interesting. More and more people coming out saying, and not just people, but national leaders coming out. Sudan's president claims the CIA and Mossad stand behind ISIS and Boko Haram. Outright says it. Al-Bashir says there is no Muslim who could carry out such acts. He claimed the CIA, America's intelligence agent, Central Intelligence Agency, and Israel's Mossad are behind the Islamist militant groups Boko Haram and ISIS. What does that make? Like 3 or 4 national leaders now who've come up and pointed the finger? Very interesting. And speaking of pointing fingers, so the United Nations has set up a, what should we call this? What is a polite way of putting this? A bridge group, shall we say. They're trying to create a bridge in Yemen to tie together the ousted government with the Houthi rebels to come together and create a new government, which all sounds lovely on the surface. I actually have to admit this, on the side note of this, a certain percentage of the rebel and preceding government people must be women, and a certain percentage must be youths. I think it's like 25% of them have to be categorized as youths and 30% women. I'm not entirely certain, but I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then in the middle of all this, they're trying to get things stabilized in Yemen because, holy shit, they really need to get things stabilized in Yemen. Press TV conducted an interview with Jamel Wakim, a professor at the Lebanese International University from Beirut, to discuss the agreement on the formation of a democratic transitional council by the opposing sides in Yemen's conflict. Wakim says this agreement is a very important step towards establishing a new government in Yemen, which is not fully under the supervision of Saudi Arabia. The process of forming a democratic transitional council might get blocked from the United States and its allies because it is viewed as taking Yemen away from the American influence. Because, you know, the US and UK and their buddies, they've worked so hard to destabilize Yemen. Why would they want it restabilized again? So yeah, of course they're going to try and interfere and do something. So watch. If they're moving forward with this, trying to stabilize the country, you can guarantee there's going to be an incident that's going to happen, and probably in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eyes peeled. And then, of course, we're going to go back and talk about the states a little bit again, because this is just... So we talked about the Kaspersky's, the NSA. First of all, you have all the hacks that went into the banks that stole over $1 billion out of banks all over the world, primarily directed at all those countries that are U.S., not friendly list, strangely enough. And of course, then we have they're into the privacy. They've broken in. They've done this. Basically, you're shit out of luck if you thought you have any privacy left whatsoever. The NSA's got it all hacked in. Then this article comes out. What is it, like 4 days after the last one? The Great SIM Heist. NSA malware and a whole lot of mess. I wrote this to cover as much of the information as I could. American and British spies hacked into the internal computer network of the largest manufacturer of SIM cards in the world, stealing the encryption keys used to protect privacy of cell phone communication across the globe. Really? Now, hold on. The point that I made, and I want to go back to this, is, unless I say, I know nothing about encryption. Well, I mean, I know a little bit, but as it applies to cell phones, I can barely work a cell phone. I am technologically retarded. I'm fully transparent with that one. But if they can hack into a SIM card, it kind of makes all those encrypted phone services and encrypted email services and encrypted online services completely a moot point, doesn't it? If they can hack into your SIM card, at least I would think so. That's the way it sounds to me. So, yet again, the NSA, they know everything that you're doing. Isn't that just delightful? Hi guys, look, I'm pointing you out on international news. Have fun. Other big news is now you've got US's biggest U.S. refinery joins the nationwide oil strike, stretching into its 4th week. Because, really, I'm sorry. But apparently, the ports on the West Coast are reopening again. So they're going to start trying to catch up on that backlog. Apparently. It's true. And, because the U.S. doesn't have enough problems, and they don't have enough problems internally, so the DHS releases an intelligence report that warns that domestic right-wing terror threat, i.e. sovereign groups, are actually a bigger terror threat than terrorist groups like ISIS. That's right, guys. I'm sorry, all you patriots out there and all you sovereign rights movement people, the people who are standing up and saying, yeah, you don't have the legal right to do these things to us. You're now classified as worse terrorists than ISIS. That also goes for, again, to tie it all together, homeschoolers, people who eat and grow organic food, you're all right-wing terrorist threats, according to the DHS. Isn't that just... Oh, I'm sure that gives so many of my listeners such a warm place in their heart to know that they're worse than ISIS. I know I am, because I'm a homeschooler and I grow like organic food. And I stand up for my legal rights too and don't think the government has a right to step on me. So I guess we're all in trouble, aren't we? This is, though, the flip side of this. They wonder why people are standing up and saying, yeah, no, those are our rights and you're not taking them away. Federal Election Commission to consider regulating online political speech. The Federal Election Committee is holding a hearing today to receive public feedback on whether it should create new rules regulating political speech, including political speech on the internet that one commissioner warned could affect blogs, YouTube videos, and even websites like the Drudge Report. Isn't that special? Because, they're going to try and shut down blogs like mine who make political commentary. Have fun with that, boys. I'm not in the US. And if you try and shut me out of the US, I'll just create a new site and I'll be like Pirate Bay, where they just keep changing their site every couple of weeks and you guys are going to just trail along behind and try and catch up. Yeah, that's not going over well with the alternative news people. Just thought I'd let you know. Now, this was interesting, though, in the midst of a lot of other stuff, and this was kind of quiet. I just caught this kind of as a byline at the tail end of another article. The Pentagon press secretary has stepped down. And apparently everyone's like, oh, he's such a good guy. He was such a good press secretary. The announcement came as a surprise to much of the press corps, who respected Kirby for his accessibility and willingness to deal at length with tough questions. Kirby says he could not speak to Carter's reason for wanting a new press secretary, but he suggested that Carter could be sort of revisiting the role of spokesman here. So the Pentagon press secretary just got fired. He stepped down, but let's face it, obviously he was pushed out. Interesting things. Now this comes into that whole news realm. This is kind of like the whole thing with Greece, where you start taking. I start with a screenshot and go, "Oh, this is a piece. Okay, I'll screenshot this," and then like a few hours later, another story comes out, and you go, "Oh, okay, well that's interesting. Okay, I'll screenshot that." And by the end of the day, you're like, "Oh, why did I bother?" So follow me through on this. One day, Afghan Taliban ready to hold peace talks with the U.S. and Qatar. This is the first report. Immediately followed, within a couple hours of, the U.S. denies any plans to talk with Afghan Taliban in Doha. Immediately followed by, Pakistan and Afghan officials say Afghan Taliban signal readiness for talks. Immediately followed by, U.S. and Taliban deny peace talks are planned in Qatar. So basically, no one's talking to anyone. No one knows what's going on, and everyone thinks that everyone else is having peace talks. There you go. If that is not a defining commentary on media coverage and how these governments work together. Occasionally I come across a story that you sit there and you read it, and I'll end up reading it like 2 or 3 times going, okay, first of all, is this the Onion printing this? No, I've cross-verified. This is Reuters, and it was covered on CNN. It was covered on Wall Street Journal. Okay. U.S. sees Iraq offensive to retake Mosul in April-May timeframe. Okay. I'm going to have to read this because you're not going to... An Iraqi and Kurdish military force of some 20,000 to 25,000 troops is being prepared to recapture the city of Mosul from Islamic State fighters, probably between April and May timeframe. The officials... Now, what is really, really humorous is like, Mosul is currently being held by between 1,000 and 2,000 Islamic State fighters. Okay, so there's somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 ISIS fighters in Mosul, and they're sending 25,000 men to get them out? I'm not really sure what they're trying to say with that commentary. Are they saying that that's... But my joke was, is this like they're sending the Persians to go after the Spartans? Because literally there's 1,000 ISIS and they're sending 25,000 Iraqi and Kurdish troops. And not only that, like they give out the entire plan of the entire thing. Get this. The main attack force being assembled for the Mosul campaign will include 5 Iraqi army brigades. 3 smaller brigades would act as reserve force, and 3 brigades of Kurdish troops would contain the city from the north and isolate it from the Islamic State forces further west. They basically outlined exactly what they're going to do between a month to 2 months ahead of time before they actually do it. And it's all over the... Really? Okay. Then they state this. It is highly unusual for U.S. military to openly telegraph the timing of upcoming offensive, especially to a large group of reporters. No shit, Sherlock. The Pentagon has described this as a pivotal battle in the overall campaign in Iraq. Officials said it was a reflection of the confidence of Iraq, which had devised the battle plan. They're absolutely committed to this. There are a lot of pieces that have come together. We want to make sure the conditions are right. But this is their plan, and they have bought into it. They're moving forward as if they will execute in the time frame I have just described. Okay, let's just read that last 2 sentences again. This is their plan. They have bought into it. They're moving forward as if they will execute in the time frame I just described. I smell something stinky. Does anyone else smell something stinky with this story? No. It's interesting. I would like to know, why it is that stories like these aren't getting, so all you're getting right now is, and especially American newspapers, the anti-Muslim crap that's coming out, and the anti-Islamic rhetoric that is being just slaughtered all over the place in the U.S. They have an article like this, which Muslims to protect Oslo synagogue. A group of Norwegian Muslims will be forming a circle, and they did this yesterday. There was over 1,000 Muslim people showed up to form a circle around the Oslo synagogue after the celebration of Shabbat this Saturday. They're calling it the Ring of Peace. And they held hands and formed a circle around the synagogue so that the Jewish people could go to their celebration of Shabbat with no worries that they're going to be attacked or some Islamic State terrorist was going to attack them, that they would have to go through 1,000 Muslims to get to the Jewish people. Now, my question is, why isn't this on the cover of Time magazine? Why isn't the Wall Street Journal covering this right smack in the middle? No, apparently they don't want to cover it. Now, I had to revisit this. There was quite a few articles that I went through. I wrote a lot of articles this week, and I'm actually in the middle of writing a massively huge major article on ISIS that I have been researching like 10, 12 hours a day for the last few days just to get it written. And in revisiting some of my previous information that we've brought out, you remember this? I broke this back in, I think it was early January. ISIS, Intelligence Technology Training, Integrated Systems Improvement Services. And they've got, Washington, D.C. offices and clearing services. They specialize in bodyguarding and military training and special combat missions, right? ISIS, look at those mercenary guys in DC. They ran out of DC. Well, apparently that didn't go very well for them, because I went to go yesterday, or actually my husband Nick went to go yesterday to go pull up a piece of information for me and goes, oh my God, look at this. ISIS in DC has changed their name. Now they're called, here we are, where's the mouse? Here we go, CIS. It's just called CIS. I wondered if it was short for sissies, but I didn't go there. What is hysterical about this? I mean, unbelievably hysterical. These guys obviously have money. We all know who runs them. So they obviously have money. And my message when I put all this information, put all the information out yesterday, because, it's what I do, was, guys, with all this money, maybe you could afford to hire someone who could actually fix your website for you. So that it doesn't say cis here, and then, oh, look at this, about ISIS over here. I mean, the whole, you got to go through it, and it's still, their website is still called ISIS. So they didn't even, build a new website and start over again. I mean, you could literally just have the traffic from the old website be auto-directed to a new website. No, they're still using the same old website that still calls them ISIS. And go looking into it, and let's go back up here. So they're their new name, Special Intelligence Service. Well, do you know who else is called the Special Intelligence Service? MI5. So apparently, I mean, it could happen, maybe, that MI5, the British Domestic Intelligence Agency, also known as the Secret Intelligence Service, maybe they've got Washington offices now. It would kind of make sense when you think about some of the shit that's been going on recently, wouldn't it? And that is the end of the news for this week. As I said at the beginning of the show, I got kind of cut off on Wednesday night, and I have a whole lot of stuff and information on the Middle East. But I am writing a massive, massive article about ISIS. So I thought, well, instead of throwing all the Middle East stuff onto the tail end of this show, I am going to probably sit down and do another special walkthrough, and I'll walk through all the information I put in this article and talk about how it pertains to all the recent news coming out of the Middle East. I might even record that today if I can manage to get my act together and finish the article. If not, hopefully it'll be out soon. Now, as you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that it's not on CCN. CCN's in the middle of doing some technical work, so that we will be back to live streaming again Wednesday, hopefully. If the live stream is not up in time for the Transpicuous News' midweek report, I will, as I did today, pre-record it and have it up and ready to be seen on Transpicuous News and Removing the Shackles around the usual time. Okay, but that is the end of the news for this week, and I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will be back with you very, very shortly. We have lots of interesting things coming out, folks. Keep your eye on the ball. Bye, everyone.
Transpicuous News, connecting the dots between the lines.